So today we'll talk about the difference between buying and renting properties for Airbnb as short-term rentals, okay? So that's Airbnb, Booking.com, VRBO, all the sites. Now, there's an obvious difference between buying and renting in upfront cost. So right off the bat, the investment is going to be higher to purchase a property, okay? Because you will need a deposit. Now, there are different types of mortgages. If you are a first-time buyer, you get a preferential rate on your mortgage and you get a lower deposit, okay? So there are certain ways to get less invested up front yourself and still buy the property, but it's not as straightforward. With arbitraging, okay, renting properties to operate as a short-term rental, you are likely gonna have to pay max a first month rent and a security deposit, which is usually 1 month's rent. Okay, so 2 months rent up front, half of that's a deposit, and the other payment is for your first month's rent right off the bat. But these can be negotiated, okay? If you have good negotiation skills, if you're taking multiple units, if you're offering a longer lease, there are ways to entice a landlord to either take no deposit or take no deposit, no first month's rent, or take a small deposit, but first 2 months, first 3 months, free rent. Okay, those types of deals can be negotiated. However, when you close on a property, you're going to get it for a certain price, and you're going to pay the mortgage off to the total of that amount that you buy the property for. Okay, so you're not going to get, free rent essentially if you're buying. But the benefit of buying property is that every month that you pay your cost for your unit, okay, when you are paying a mortgage as opposed to paying rent, that payment is actually building equity for yourself, okay? And once you start to grow and that rental payment starts to get into the high 5 figures per month, that's when you start to ask yourself, would I rather be paying that rental amount as a mortgage payment and building that up in equity? So every month you're building high 5 figures in equity in your properties. And you also, if you buy property, you have the opportunity to refinance down the line. Say the house is worth more money according to the market, or the house is worth more money because you've done home improvements. Then you can refinance for the new value of the property and actually pull out some equity to then invest in more property. And you can grow that way. And that is another benefit, is that you can increase the value of a property. You're not going to do that if you're renting. If you're renting somebody's home, you're not going to pay for renovations. You're not going to install, a nicer shower because you're doing that for somebody else. You don't own the property. So that's the pros and cons. Now, the reason that you would rent, the reason you would arbitrage is because it's a quicker and easier start, okay? So you're not as tied to the property. If something went wrong or it didn't work out in your model, says your first time running short-term rentals and you realize, oh, well, actually this area isn't that good for me, I want to pull out. Well, if you're renting and you break the lease, you'll likely just lose your deposit. But you can also negotiate with the landlord beforehand that, say, you need to give 30 days notice, and that will be a full refund of the deposit. And some landlords would be inclined to accept that if you offer it on both ends. So you say, okay, if this isn't going to work out for you or it isn't going to work out for me, either one of us can give 30 days notice, and we leave the property with no hard feelings, and I get my deposit back as long as the property is in good shape. So you can negotiate that. So you are more flexible with that type of property, okay? With renting as opposed to buying. And it's lower capital upfront. So you can actually grow faster initially. Does that make sense? So the way you may want to do it is, you may want to do your first 4 or 5, maybe up to 10 properties as arbitrage properties. Once you're making that cash flow and you want to reinvest in more units, hold off a little longer. Buy your next property. Make it a purchase. Start to build some equity. Start to build some long-term wealth generation, okay? And long-term opportunities. A few years down the line, you can finance through equity, buy nicer, bigger homes, start to really invest in real estate, and get to that 7, 8, 9 figure net worth. Okay, I hope that made sense. If you learned something today, guys, click the link in the bio. I go through everything on my newsletter. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting more videos like this daily.